Hello, everybody. I felt like doing a live video, so here I am. I want to talk about awakening, since that's what's happening at the moment. The great awakening, the great separation. Oh, I love heart. Hello, Yana. Awakening is a very sort of it's the hardest thing that a person, a human, can go through. By far, really. And just taking my socks off because it's getting hot in here. And this awakening process is difficult and uncomfortable and painful because essentially what wakes up is the real I. And in order for the real I to awaken, the false self has to make way. And that making way process, yeah, there's some angry and sad faces coming up. That making way process, it really is the death of the false self. And the false self is who we all think we are. So it's tricky. It's very tricky. Hello, Natalia. Hello, Debbie. Hello, Marianne from Australia. Hello. So what's happening at the moment in the world, apart from, nonsense and silliness, what's happening is actually a huge spiritual battle. And it's an incredible opportunity that we as individuals have, that you have right now. Incredible opportunity to rise above all illusion and embody the truth of who and what we are as human beings. And one of the difficulties that we face is that the wisdom, the knowledge, the guidance that is needed for this process to unfold in any individual is missing. The knowledge, the wisdom, and the guidance is very hard to find. Very hard to find. Because of witch hunts, because of organized religion, because of New Age spirituality, because of false light teachings, because of so-called gurus and teachers and healers that really are only operating from the space of ego, false self. And somebody that is operating from false self cannot help you find true self, cannot help you navigate this path, which is known as the razor's edge. And it's known as the razor's edge for a good reason. It's tricky. It's sharp, it bites. So if you have any questions, by the way, then please use the comments section. I don't think this will be a long live, so if you're watching live and you have any questions, then just go for it, jump in. This battle, this spiritual battle, has been going on. The war has been going on for thousands of years, and perhaps for all of eternity. But this chapter of this battle, of this book, so to speak, is all about the darkness overcoming the light. And our lifetimes, since I was born until now, since you were born until now, has really been defined by darkness. And anyone that is a genuine truth seeker can see that. we've been told that this is the greatest time to be a human, and things are better than they've ever been. And, you know, with science and technology and democracy, haha, we're so well off. But all of this is just a smokescreen to fool people into thinking that there's nothing going on, when what is actually going on is literally a battle for their soul. Literally a battle for your soul. And what will happen, I suppose, is that many people will fall into deeper delusion, and some will rise above and find the truth and awaken. Again, if you have any questions, please, you know, we all have a lot of questions these days, and ask them in the comment section. I might be able to help. So the forces of darkness, so to speak, have a goal, have an agenda, and that agenda is the slavery of humanity and the hijacking of our consciousness, of our soul. So it's full steam ahead. Why? Because this battle is taking place now, and it is the final battle. It is the final battle. Because what has happened is that for thousands of years, humanity has been living in a kind of an illusion, a darkness, a slumber, during which time these forces of darkness have been able to run rampant and to do whatever they want, pretty much, from atomic bombs to pollution of the water, pollution of the food, spraying in the skies. I mean, literally trying to turn this paradise planet into a kind of a hell. And now at the final hour, there is something happening on the planet, which is a huge influx of light, of very high vibrational energy, which is awakening millions of people. And because everything that happens out there happens inwardly first, because all of that outside is actually a reflection of the internal consciousness of the individual. As millions of people awaken at this time, the tide is turned in the favor of the forces of light. Now, of course, this is just my interpretation of what's going on. It's my observation. It's what I believe to be true. And it is also, in my eyes, self-evident. When you look at what's going on, it's self-evident that this is the case. However, whether you subscribe to this or not, the fact is that there is this great awakening happening, and you can probably feel it. You may have felt more connected to nature lately. You may have felt a change in your vision. You may be hearing a ringing in your ears. You may be feeling feelings that you perhaps have never felt before, something like joy, something like bliss, something like a state of deep inner peace, in spite of the fact that the world is more chaotic and seemingly more dangerous and scary. There are many signs and symptoms of this awakening, but what is important is that we stay focused on our internal world, our inner landscape, because that is where the work is done. If you don't do that, and instead allow your attention to be taken externally, and you stay focused on the news, the media, social media, what we're being told, what the government is saying, what they're saying about this virus and this so-called pandemic, etc., etc., etc. If you allow your attention to be taken outside, then you continue to give away your power, and there comes a time where it's basically too late. And that's also happening for a lot of people. So this is why it's known as the Great Separation, because, as it's been written, brother will turn against brother, and you will lose friends and family and connections and almost anything that has felt as if it provided some sense of security as you go through this process of awakening, and you awaken to the reality that there is really nothing to be afraid of. So Yana asks a very interesting question. Yana asks, how can we accelerate our own awakening? There's really two questions. How can we accelerate our own awakening and that of those around us who may be resistant? So the second question first, you can't. You cannot accelerate anybody else's awakening. And the more you try, the more they will resist. The more you try to awaken somebody else, the more they will resist. The only people who are going to awaken are the people who are ready to awaken. And not many people are ready to awaken. We're in a minority. You have to understand this. So Yana, your question is, I know, sincere, and I know that you have loved ones that you would like to take with you on this awakening path, but trying to take someone with you will only prevent you from waking up yourself. You cannot take anyone with you. It's their journey, and if they choose to go on it, then that's their choice. Most won't. So you must make a choice. Would I choose to awaken without them, or to sit back down with them? That's the question that you should be asking yourself, I would suggest. Hello, Vedrana. Marian says, totally agree with everything you say. What can I do as one person to awaken others? I think I just answered that one. You see, this is the big trap. This is the biggest trap that there is. We have been brainwashed, really brainwashed and hypnotized and conditioned and programmed into what is really a herd mentality, like sheep, you know. And by the way, the word Ovid as in COVID, the word Ovid in Latin means sheep, FYI. I think that might be interesting to some people. The herd mentality is a complete lie, a complete illusion. There are no others. There is only you and your experience that is of the utmost importance. And it should be of the utmost importance to you because, you know, time is running out for you. Your life is running through your fingers. Death is approaching rapidly. And the combination of being made to believe that death is nothing to worry about, that we shouldn't think on it, we shouldn't focus on it, we should just bury people in the ground quickly and then move back on with life. And this society which is all about distraction and out there, and this herd mentality business means that that's some of the structure, some of the framework of what keeps us asleep. The herd mentality is something we have to turn our back on. And the idea that we can help other people awaken is ludicrous. It's completely ludicrous, because the awakening process is unbelievably rare and unbelievably difficult. And going through that process is like, as I said right at the beginning, it's the hardest thing a human being can do. It's the most ambitious undertaking anyone can do. And the idea that you can take someone with you, or you can help someone else to wake up, especially when you're not awake yourself yet, is it's just a bad idea. It's a silly idea. It cannot happen. So you cannot waken other people. And that sounds like bad news until you realize that once you wake up yourself, you don't need to wake up anyone else. There's no need, because once you've done it, and you're free of all of the nonsense. So. Marianne says, are you saying, Ben, that if we end up in Orwellian society, more so than what we know of as today, that we just go with that? I suppose what I'm saying is that there's really nothing we can do about whether or not we're going to end up in an Orwellian society. And actually, we are already, as you say, we are already in an Orwellian society, and we have been for a very long time, very long time. And the reason, the ground for which, the ground on which that Orwellian society will become complete, you know, complete authoritarianism and technocracy and the total enslavement of humanity, that can only happen if more and more people don't start waking up. And it can only not happen if more and more people wake up. So life is so paradoxical. By focusing on one thing that we don't want to happen, we make it happen. And even when it seems like it's already happening, by removing our attention from it, we take the power out of it. And this is the only way that it can happen. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't rise up. I'm not saying that we don't need a revolution. I'm not saying that we don't need some kind of activism. Although signing petitions and going on marches just to get arrested doesn't do anyone any good, because the kind of activism we need is where people will be prepared to die for their rights. But the only people that are prepared to die for their rights are the people that have woken up to the power that they have. And this is what needs to happen. We have to wake up, and the waking up process, as I teach it and as I guide people through it, is very simple. It's first, know that you're safe. And in order to do that, you have to heal a certain amount of trauma, so to speak. Secondly, know that you are free. In order to do that, you have to let go of the guilt and the false responsibility that has been put upon you from birth. Essentially, what this is about is a process of healing the energy body and the limitations that have been imposed upon our own energy body. And I'm talking partly about the chakra system. So the first chakra at the root of the spine, the base of the spine, the root chakra, is about safety. When it's healed, you know that you're safe. You know in your bones, in your being, that you're safe. Until you've done that, you live in fear, which is where most people are who are alive on the planet today. Then you heal the second chakra. When the second chakra is healed, you know what it means to be free as a human being, free to be yourself. When you've done that, you heal the third chakra, which is the solar plexus, which is about personal power. When you've done that, you know your power. And anybody that is trying, and many people are, that are trying to change the outside world without having done that inner work first, are just going to find themselves, it's like running into walls, you know. Nothing can come of that. So I'm not saying that we just have to go with it, no. I'm saying that what we have to do is remove our attention from it, which seems very counterintuitive, because if there's a threat, we are hardwired to look to where the threat is coming from. But this is one of the ways in which we are manipulated. We're kept in our fear and scared. We pay attention to what they want us to pay attention to. And this is the situation that humanity is in. So it takes a certain amount of intelligence and a certain amount of self-discipline to say, I'm not looking in that direction. I'm looking inwards. I'm doing the inner work so that I can know that I'm safe, so that I can access my freedom, so that I can empower, truly empower myself and rise above these limitations that have been imposed upon me and imposed upon us for a very long time. That is the only way that we can actually avoid the continuing decline of humanity into this increasingly Orwellian society. Yeah, Mayan says, once we have seen, there's no way back. It's true. Once you're on this path, it's a one-way path. There's no going back. And everyone who gets on the path wishes there was a way back at one point or another. But then there comes a point where you wouldn't go back for anything, because safety, freedom, power, and love, which is what comes next, are what life is all about. Yeah, Mayan says we can't awaken others, but we can inspire others, I think. I would agree. And the most inspiring thing is the example that we give, that we show through the way that we walk, through the way that we talk, through our energy field. You know, from the unawakened state, there are just 1,000 questions all the time. What can I do? What's going on? Is it true? Is it false? From the awakened state, there are very few questions, and right action comes spontaneously. It comes spontaneously through words, through behavior, through where you go and who you go with and what you do. And right action is what is needed right now. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And at the risk of sounding like this is some kind of infomercial, whatever they're called, I'm just coming to the end of the 12-week course that I designed about 8 or 9 weeks ago. And the results of that course have been pretty remarkable, in that a number of people who have stayed with the course and followed it faithfully have had huge awakenings. And that's ongoing, and I'm guiding those people through the course. What the course is a systematic, step-by-step process, beginning with the absolute foundation of awakening, which is breath work and relaxation. So we start very slowly, and I guide you to, first of all, be clear in and of yourself, with yourself, why you're doing it. Because most people come to spiritual practice, let's call it, without a clear understanding of why they're doing it. And the success of the practice depends upon the extent to which you are clear about why you're doing it. So the first thing is we do a ritual in which everyone gets that kind of clarity internally, that kind of intentionality about what it is that we're doing and why they're doing it. And that in itself is huge. Then we begin by working on breath work. We begin with the simplest possible practices, how to breathe properly. And anybody can benefit from this, even if you've been doing breath work for years, which most people have not. Most people don't breathe properly. And breathing is the most important thing we do. If you don't breathe properly, then you can't think properly. If you don't breathe properly, then your immune system cannot function properly. If you don't breathe properly, you won't get good sleep. If you don't breathe properly, you won't get nutrition from the food that you eat. Breathing is the absolute foundation. So that's where we start, and with relaxation. And then slowly, over the course of the 12 weeks, what we do is we introduce, and I say we because I'm working with Kimber, and we're doing this together. We introduce various practices which are designed, well, not that they're designed, I didn't design them. I share these practices with you, some yoga techniques, some qigong techniques, some alchemy techniques, Jinshin Jitsu, and many other things which I've studied for decades now. And slowly, step by step, what happens is that you let go of and wriggle out of and escape many of these energetic limitations that have been imposed upon you. It's a very simple formula. It's simple, it's systematic, and I can almost guarantee that anybody that does this over the course of the 12 weeks, as we recommend, will have a major shift, a major awakening, as is being demonstrated by the people that are doing this first course. And of course, throughout the course, you have my and Kimber's support, and you have the support and the accountability of the group. At the moment, we're doing it through a Facebook group. And yeah, it's very, very powerful. And I'm not doing it for the money. It's as cheap as I can possibly make it practically. So money should not be a problem. And if you're interested, then the next one will start in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. Maybe 2 weeks, I don't know. We haven't set that yet. If you're interested, send me a message or comment in the comments below. Because like I said earlier, it's very hard to find proper guidance because very few people have awakened. There's a lot of talk about woke and enlightenment and truth realization and this and that, but really, honestly, there are very few people that have done it. Very many people that talk about it have an intellectual understanding of it. Many people talk about unconditional love and truth and a lot of highfalutin ideals, but the truth is that going through this process is agonizing, excruciating. It's like stepping into a fire, and there are very few people that want to do that. So, but that's what I'm here for. I'm here for those of you that are sincere about that and have the courage to do it. Okay, Marianne is asking if I feel like elaborating on my opinion about, what's her name? Jacinta Ardern, this New Zealand Prime Minister. I can do, at the risk of alienating half the audience. Well, that's never stopped me before. So, yeah, the course is amazing, Ritambara, and I think you would like it. So send me a message. Send me a message. Friend me on Facebook. Yeah, okay. So the people of New Zealand voted for her in the same way that people of America voted for Obama, and the people of Canada voted for Trudeau, and the people of the UK voted for Blair. These are all young, fresh-faced, optimistic, yes, we can, charismatic individuals who really, let's face it, they kind of seem too good to be true when you first encounter them. And partly because what they're doing is very liberal. What they're talking about doing, what they're promising to do is very liberal and very seemingly environment friendly, and it just ticks a lot of boxes that we all kind of know deep down need to be ticked. But these politicians are all handpicked a long time ago, trained. The agenda is set before they even start talking about it. Because the way it works is that we are studied, you know, we're studied through Facebook, through Google. Everything you do, almost everything that you think, every click that you make with your mouse is studied. And this data is mined, and politics has now become, it's just a circus. It's an absolute circus. So there's a pattern. I've seen the pattern. It started with Blair in the UK when he was promising various things. One of the things that got me about him, I believed in him, you know, was I saw him making a speech and he said, education, education, education. I was young. I was still pretty naive about these things. And it just sounded to me like he had his heart in the right place. This is how it works, you see. They play on emotions. Humanity has been trapped in an emotional quagmire, an emotional bog. We're stuck in our own emotionality, not understanding that our emotions are just, they're just like, they're like signposts, but we mistake it for the road itself. We have been fooled into thinking that our emotions are the be-all and end-all of life. And this has been done to us in very clever ways through popular music, through Hollywood and other movies, through all kinds of things like this, you know. So these politicians do things and say things and behave in ways that pull our emotional, our heartstrings, and make us believe in them. And that's the key. So I'm able now to recognize these things almost at first glance. I see someone and I know, you know, what's really going on in them. Because I suppose because I've managed to escape this emotional trap, having done the work. And so when I first saw her, I knew that she is one of these cherry-picked politicians that are there to guide humanity in a certain direction, which is exactly what is happening now in New Zealand. In New Zealand, under her command, laws were passed about a week ago that basically say that human beings have no rights anymore. I mean, I'm summarizing, that's what this legislation says. Your house can be searched without a warrant. You can be arrested for no reason, for suspicion only. If you're suspected of something, you can be arrested. They don't need proof. Your place of business can be shut down if they deem it inappropriate, but if they deem it appropriate, it's okay. Basically, the government has suddenly passed legislation that puts all power over every single person in New Zealand, all power in the hands of the government. So she came along pretending to be extremely liberal and extremely compassionate. And that's another indication that somebody is lying, because this compassion is false compassion. It's not real. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing, really. But because of our emotionality as human beings, because our emotions have been encouraged and stoked, and because we've become so deeply entrenched in this emotionality, we're very easily fooled by someone that appears to be saying the right things and doing the right things. But if you look at what she's actually doing, she's not fulfilling her promises. They're empty promises. Instead, I just posted a video of her this morning in which she says, and I quote, I don't want to misquote her, so let me find the video. Okay, I'm going to misquote her probably because it's taking too long to find the video. She says, you can trust us as your only source of information. A politician telling you that you can trust her little gang as the only source of information. And you know, anybody, no matter how ardently they support her, that hears that and is not alarmed is fast asleep. So there you go. I've talked a little bit about her. Tamara says, this is similar to what was happening in the 60s. Just now we would be arrested and called by the word that begins and ends with the letter T. Love, T, T. You lost me there a little bit, Tamara. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Bimaji. Hi, Didi. So, you know, I'm not saying anything different than what I've said for about 10 years now. I've been saying pretty much the same thing for about a decade or more. You can go back and see the old videos. I keep saying the same thing. Do the inner work, do the inner work, do the inner work. And it's validating for me now this time because, you know, I see most people are kind of getting more and more afraid and confused. It's the opposite for me and for those of us that have done the work already and they're really committed to it, because this time is validating. This is the time where we say, yep, I knew it. I was right. I'm glad I did that. And it wasn't easy, but, you know, so here I am, and I'm hopefully able to support you that go through the same process. It's not a time to be scared. It is a time to celebrate. It is a time to seize the opportunity that life is presenting you. Because if we're honest, if we're really honest, the normality that we have left behind was utterly worthless. It was a normality in which the best we could hope for was a little distraction, a little bit of comfort. It was a normality in which humanity was simply turning a blind eye to the fact that our true mother, the planet, was being raped and pillaged and burned and drilled. It was a normality in which the rich were always getting richer and the masses of the poor were getting poorer, a reality in which starvation and hunger and poverty and corruption were the frameworks of reality. And so for me, when I see what's happening in the world at the moment, I rejoice, because this is something I've been waiting for my whole life. This is a confirmation that the direction in which I was facing for 4 decades, literally, was the right direction, even though everyone I ever knew, friends and family, told me I was crazy. Hey, Christopher. Good to see you. Hey, Leia. Yeah, I wonder who's funding New Zealand Labour too. That would be an interesting thing to find out. So it's a good time to be alive, but it's also a dangerous time to be alive, because if you don't make the right choice now, time is running out. If you don't turn and face in that proper direction, if you don't stop hoping blindly that somebody out there, a government or a doctor or a policeman, is going to save you, and if you don't start being deadly honest with yourself, then I fear that there is not much time left for those kinds of lifestyles. my feeling is that we're on the cusp of a huge transformation, and that will probably not look like anything that any of us can imagine. We're talking about the rapture. We're talking about the great separation. We're talking about the flood, if you like. And none of us can really imagine what that will be like, how that will happen. But it is happening. I have no doubt that it's happening. And although it's a process, it seems to be accelerating, according to my sense of what's going on internally, energetically, seems to be, and many others, seems to be accelerating exponentially fast. So now is the time to turn your attention to yourself. You cannot help anybody else unless you're truly awake. You cannot do anything to change the course of the world outside unless the work that you do to change it is first happening inside. Any last questions? I think I'll wrap it up now. So any last questions? Now's the time to ask. I will just, in case anybody is, no, right. Nicole asks, what about our kids? Well, most of your children are, following your example. All of your children are following your example. So if you're very honest with yourselves, then what you'll see is that unless you change the example, then they're not going to go in a very good direction. I have known, as a parent myself, I've known many parents of many children, and I have met, I can count on one hand, the children that I've met that have been raised well. So what about your children? You have to focus on yourself. And that's the best lesson that we can teach our children. Focus on yourself. It's not selfish. It's just life. The true love comes from an empowered human being. And true power comes from an evolutionary process that a child hopefully can embody by the age of about 13 or 14 years old. Most human adults, most human beings older than that, say 15 years and older, are children. Whatever age their body is, we're talking about 80, 90, 100-year-old people who have not developed beyond the age, emotionally and mentally and spiritually, who have not developed beyond the age of about 10. So anybody that asks, what about our kids? Make sure that you're not a child yourself. And you probably are. And the work that is necessary to grow up spiritually is not easy, and it's a tough job. So before you ask what about, it's the same as the questions at the beginning of this call. How can we help other people awaken? You can't until you're awake yourself. When you are fully awake, then you can help other people. When you're fully awake, then the example that your children follow is the example of a fully awake adult human being, and they'll be fine. It's never too late, but most people never start. And that's the truth of it. Tamara says, can you share some good reads? Yeah, can. First book I recommend is called... Let's keep it simple. The only book I recommend is called... It's the first book of a trilogy. The author is Jed McKenna. And the first book is called Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing. Really, that book, that trilogy of books is extremely powerful and has influenced me greatly. And for this day and age, if you're serious, then that's what I recommend. Nicole, how can we help them to see that their old normal is actually crazy? Nicole, the only way you can help them is by transcending the bullshit. You've got to do the work. Until you've done it, until you're out the other side, all of the questions are coming from the wrong place. And all of the questions are really a distraction of the ego. You see, this work is about rising above ego. Any human being that is still run by their ego, which is all human beings practically, any question that comes from that space internally is going to be nothing but a distraction. Perhaps I should become a politician. Perhaps I should become an activist. Perhaps I should write a book. Perhaps I should earn more money. Perhaps I should travel the world. Perhaps I should ... Perhaps I should try to awaken other people. Perhaps I should try to show my kids this, that, and the other. It's all ego, all of it. And until you transcend that, until you rise above that, and you live your life from a place that is not just ego, then you can't do anything for anyone. You can't. And it's a harsh truth, but it's a fact. Okay, lots of love. And I'll see you soon, probably.